If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you'll remember on my Okanagan Valley Railway, I had two steel trestles. The one actually I used to have at the end of my subscriber videos, which is the one you've seen here. So moving ahead in time with my Ontario Northland layout, I had another steel trestle to build. However, this one was going to be straight. So I decided to take one of my curved steel trestles, not the one in that video or the one shown here, but the bigger one. As the shorter one, I actually managed to sell it. Somebody was interested in buying it off me. But the bigger one, it kind of came apart when I dismantled the layout. So I basically rebuilt it to run it straight. And you'll see in this video a little bit of how I did that. In order to bridge the Englehart River on my new layout, I needed roughly almost 3 feet of bridge, which would encompass about 3 of the larger pieces and 2 of the smaller ones that you see in the picture here, which I've carefully cut with basically a box cutter knife. And I carefully cut it, and then I spliced it back together with glue. Not pretty, but it worked out. And I also did some minor repair work on the 2 towers that I also retained for this project. Now, I'll start by saying that I'm not an exact science kind of guy, so I kind of play with things until they fit. So in the next picture here, you can see that I've got the bridge sitting on top of the towers, not glued in yet. And you've seen that I've had to extend out on the left side, a little bit on the right side too, some pieces of humus out from what I originally had due to close the gap to the bridge itself. And I've also used some 2-inch foam to build up from the bottom and bring the bridge up to where I figure it needed to be. Now, with my not so exact science, I did run into a couple of issues. First, in the next picture, you'll notice that I've built out some pieces of wood and I put in where the initial bridge abutments will be, right near the edges. And then next up, you'll notice there's a big piece of plastic styrene laying down there, because I'm also going to be doing the Highway 11 bridge, which is kind of going to be in the foreground. My plan is to make it so I can remove it so I could take some really nice train pictures in the future. The other problem I ran into, you'll notice there's a sheet of plywood that's raised up in the middle where the river's going to go. The reason being is I originally miscalculated the depth, and it would have been almost like a canyon, which if you've ever seen pictures of the Englehart River, it is not. It is relatively low river banks. So I raised it up and put a new piece of plywood in where the new riverbed would go. The next thing I did is, you can see in this picture, is I had to kind of make sort of some landforms. So what I did is I used some very thin cardstock, which I just use old cereal boxes. If for one thing, it's free. Well, the cereal's not free, but since I'm eating it anyway, you'll see that where I've kind of glued in some pieces for both the riverbanks, and I think I also use some pieces of styrene in there as well. I use whatever I have on hand and whatever works. So you can see that things are starting to come together a little bit there. So in the next picture, you'll see that I've put in some rock molds. I also scavenged those from the old train layout. I try and save whatever I can. And basically, there may be the wrong tint in that, but that can be easily remedied. Also, you see some little squares in the bottom. Those are going to be little risers for the bridge towers, because once again, I miscalculated a bit and I had to raise the towers up a bit. And also in the next picture here, you'll see some rock moldings that are on the other side of the river. Now we're moving on to the next picture here, but first I neglected to mention something. You'll notice the background is very white. So basically what I did is I also pre-set up the backdrop for that area. In most cases, I'm going to be using probably something thicker. I'm not sure what yet. Maybe thin plywood or hardboard. But for this case, I want to use something very thin. So I actually have a big sheet of styrene there. And eventually I can put a backdrop, but it's also removable. But I need to be able to fit that in before I moved on with this project. So in this slide, you'll see that I've tinted all the rocks. I've added in some greenery and grass on them as well. I've painted the bottom of the Englehart River, kind of a dirty brown color, and I put some rocks and some sticks, which are going to be logs, in there as well. And you can also see where the bases for where the bridge abutments are going to go. And then here's just a couple more angles. There's another shot showing the left side, and you can see more of the greenery, or almost like moss growing on top of the rocks there, and that it came out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I also painted the abutments kind of a concrete gray. And then what I did after that is I added in some, basically it's like a moss kind of material for bushes and stuff like that. For trees, I figure I can add them after. I can stick them in after. I am going to add a few in as well to add to it because it's very overgrown. If you ever see pictures of the bridge and the Englehart River, and you can look at that on Google Earth actually if you want to. While I was working on that Englehart River scene, I was also working on the track that was going to go over the top of the bridge. Well, unfortunately, I was unable to save the track over the curved trestle. It just came all apart. So I had to get another piece of Microengineering Code 83 bridge track. It's not cheap, but it looks really good because the ties are nicely spaced together. And with that, you get a kit of the parts that go along the sides, and you can put the barrels and all that in too if you're modeling the steam area for the water barrels. So I put the track down, and I also had the Code 70 rails that give you that for the guardrails, and you can see that quite clearly in the picture. So I put them in, I bent them, and I super glued them down to the ties. Just be very careful you do that. Your fingers may get a little sticky. And then I got a rust color and I painted them. And I also painted the sides of the rails of the bridge track rail brown. And it is, as you can see here, it's all secured in place on the actual bridge decking. Meanwhile, back at the river scene, I finally got around to pouring the epoxy. Now, a couple of things here. So when working with epoxy, it can be a little tricky and be a bit messy. So if you have some clothes on that you care about, you might want to wear something else. I mean, typically I didn't get any of my clothes, but just in case, because it is messy. So what I did is I mixed, there's a 2-part epoxy. There's different types. There's Envirotex. I used a different brand, which is actually a little more cost effective, I found. But, you know, use whatever you want. And then what I did is I pre-mixed some paints on a little tray just to play around with it until I got kind of a color I wanted, which was kind of a greenish, muddy, similar to the riverbed, but a little bit more green. And then I dribbled that into the epoxy once I poured the two together with the hardener. And basically I got it until I got this nice murky color. Now, it depends what you're modeling. If you're modeling a lake or something, obviously you don't want this color. Probably not. But for the Englehart River, it was a very close match to what I've got in the pictures. Now, before you pour epoxy, make darn sure you dam up the ends of the river. Otherwise, you can end up with a mess all over your floor, and it gets really bad. So I did that. However, if you ever watch Boulder Creek Railroad YouTube videos, he's very good with the scenery, by the way. I highly recommend him. Anyway, he does a double thing with caulking. I just did a single. I should have done both sides. And as you can see, if you look carefully down to the right, you'll see some paper towels and newspaper on the floor. Because yes, I had a leak, and that stuff, it'll find any little leak and patholease resistance. Luckily, I did have it on the floor, so I didn't wreck the floor, but it did still make quite a mess. So just a word of caution there. So here's the finished product. I think it came out quite nice, personally speaking. I did have to do some additional shimming, so that's where little pieces of styrene can come in handy, just to shore things up from underneath, make things nice and even. Now I ended up gluing the tower down, and I also glued, of course, the abutments on the right side. The bridge itself is virtually just sitting on top, so in case something happens in the future, I could actually remove the bridge, which might come in handy for some reason. So other than that, it looks quite good. And so now I'll bet you want to see a train run over it. So let's do that. If you enjoyed watching this video, please click like, and if you want to see more videos on model trains and real trains, please subscribe now.